You won't believe some of the scams people fall for.
Yeah.
We're talking millions of dollars lost to schemes that sound almost too ridiculous to be true.
Right.
But that's the thing about fraud. It often preys on our desires and our trust.
Absolutely.
You've brought us a stack of information on just this topic.
Yeah.
A guide to understanding fraudulent schemes.
Yeah.
We're going to break down how they work, the different types,
Right.
and most importantly, how to spot them.
Yeah. It's fascinating how these schemes, while diverse, all tap into basic human vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
And they can be incredibly convincing.
Yeah.
You might have even encountered some of these scams yourself without realizing it.
That's a little unsettling.
Yeah.
So where do we even begin?
Right.
What exactly is a fraudulent scheme according to these sources?
Okay, so the guide defines it as deceptive plans or practices intended to deceive individuals or organizations for financial gain or to obtain something of value through dishonest means. But it's more than just trickery.
Right.
It's about understanding why people fall for them.
Okay, so it's not just about the tricks, but about the psychology behind why these schemes work.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
Uh-huh.
Let's dive into a specific example.
Okay.
What about those Ponzi schemes?
Yeah, Ponzi schemes.
Those always feel a little like financial fairy tales gone wrong.
They're like financial houses of cards.
Right.
Built on the promise of unrealistic returns. They lure in investors with the allure of quick and easy wealth.
Yeah.
But the returns are paid out using money from newer investors, not actual profit.
So it's all smoke and mirrors, right?
Yeah.
What happens when they run out of new investors?
Well, that's when the whole thing collapses.
Oh, wow.
Often leaving devastating consequences.
Right.
It's a classic example of a scheme that thrives during times of economic uncertainty. When people are desperate for high returns, they're more likely to overlook the warning signs.
That makes sense. People are looking for a lifeline and they think they found it.
Yeah.
But it's really a trap.
Right.
Speaking of traps,
Yeah.
are pyramid schemes similar in how they exploit people?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Both Ponzi and pyramid schemes rely on a constant influx of new participants to keep the illusion going.
Right.
In pyramid schemes, you're promised big earnings by recruiting new members, not necessarily by selling a product.
Okay.
It's less about a tangible product and more about getting people to sign up under you.
Ah, so like those multi-level marketing programs.
Exactly.
Or MLMs.
Yes.
Where the focus seems to be more on recruiting than actual sales.
That's right.
I've seen those popping up everywhere.
And the problem is, like Ponzi schemes, they're unsustainable.
Right.
Eventually, recruitment dries up and the whole structure collapses.
It's like a chain reaction of broken promises and financial losses.
Yeah.
But these scams don't just prey on our desire for easy money, do they?
No, they can target a wide range of vulnerabilities.
Okay.
Think about investment scams. These are particularly insidious because they prey on people's hopes for financial security.
Especially today, with all the hype around certain investments, this one feels especially relevant.
Absolutely.
How do these investment scams actually work?
Well, fraudsters dangle tempting investment opportunities with promises of high returns and minimal risk, often creating a sense of urgency or exclusivity to pressure victims into making quick decisions.
So they play on our fear of missing out or FOMO to get us to act impulsively.
Exactly. And once the victim invests, the scammer vanishes with the money.
Oh, wow.
Leaving them with nothing.
Right.
It's like a mirage in the desert. It looks real, but it's just an illusion.
It's scary how convincing they can be.
Yeah.
I bet there are tons of examples of this happening, especially online.
Oh, yeah. Imagine a scammer pitching you an exclusive early bird opportunity in a groundbreaking startup.
Okay.
Promising astronomical returns.
This is the catch.
Yeah.
The business doesn't even exist.
Wow, that's pretty brazen.
Right.
Speaking of preying on vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
What about those scams that target people's good intentions?
Right.
It's hard to believe people would exploit those.
Unfortunately, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
Take fake charities, for example.
Okay.
Imagine a devastating natural disaster. A scammer seizes this opportunity to create a fake charity.
Okay.
With a name that sounds very similar to a legitimate organization.
That's awful.
Yeah.
Taking advantage of people's generosity, especially during times of crisis, feels particularly cruel.
It is. They appeal to people's empathy and collect donations for a cause that doesn't exist.
Right.
Pocketing the money instead of helping those in need.
This is why it's so important to really vet any charity before donating.
Absolutely.
Make sure they're legitimate and that your money is actually going to the intended cause.
Yeah. Vetting is essential.
Right.
And this idea of scrutiny applies to so many other types of fraud as well.
Let's talk about advance fee fraud, which is essentially a pay-to-play scam.
Okay, advance fee fraud. That rings a bell.
Yeah.
What exactly does it involve?
You're promised a large sum of money alone
Okay.
or some other tempting benefit.
Right.
But there's a catch.
Uh-oh.
You need to pay an upfront fee to access it.
Okay.
The scammer convinces the victim that this fee is essential, but once it's paid, the promised reward never materializes.
So you have to pay money to get money.
Right.
That seems suspicious right off the bat.
Exactly. It's a classic tactic to create a sense of legitimacy and urgency.
Right.
A classic example would be a fake loan offer,
Okay.
where they say you need to pay a processing fee to get a low-interest loan, but it's all a lie.
It's like they're banking on people's desperation to make them overlook these obvious red flags.
Sadly, that's often the case.
Yeah.
And these scams aren't limited to finance.
Right.
They can pop up in various industries, even employment. It's all about exploiting people's desire for something valuable by creating a false sense of legitimacy.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it can be really convincing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels like we're surrounded by these schemes.
Right.
It's making me a little paranoid, to be honest.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it's understandable to feel that way. But remember, knowledge is power.
Right.
And that brings us to one of the most prevalent scams in our digital age.
Okay.
Phishing and email scams.
Right.
They're lurking in our inboxes, trying to trick us into giving up sensitive information.
Phishing.
Yeah.
I get those emails all the time.
Oh, yeah.
They try to trick me into thinking they're from my bank
Right.
or a trusted online store. How do they get so convincing?
Well, they impersonate legitimate entities like banks, government agencies, or well-known companies.
Yeah.
Their emails often have urgent subject lines to create a sense of panic and make you act quickly without thinking.
Like, your account has been compromised. Click here immediately.
Exactly.
I've definitely seen those before.
Yeah.
And it's easy to fall for them in a moment of panic.
Right. And those click here links lead to fake websites
Oh, wow.
designed to steal your personal information.
Okay.
That's why it's so important to be cautious about any email that asks you to click a link or provide sensitive information.
So what should you do if you receive a suspicious email?
Well, never click on any links or open attachments from an email you weren't expecting,
Okay.
especially if it asks for sensitive information.
Right.
Always contact the organization directly through their official channels to verify the legitimacy of the email.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
It's better to be safe than sorry,
Right.
especially when it comes to your personal data.
Absolutely.
Speaking of trust. What about insurance fraud?
Okay, so insurance fraud.
That seems like a whole other level of deception.
It's a breach of trust that involves deceiving insurance companies to receive undeserved payouts.
Okay.
This can range from staging accidents and inflating claims
Right.
to faking injuries or damages.
It's like those stories you hear about people intentionally causing car accidents
Oh, yeah.
to get a bigger insurance payout.
Right.
It seems so risky and dishonest.
It is, and these dishonest actions have consequences beyond just the financial loss for insurance companies.
Right.
They drive up premiums for everyone and erode the trust that's essential for the insurance system to function effectively.
It's a ripple effect that impacts all of us.
Yeah.
Okay, we've talked about scams that target our desire for financial gain and our empathy.
Right.
But what about those that prey on our desperation?
That's where loan fraud comes in.
Okay.
It's a deliberate attempt to deceive lenders for financial gain
Right.
by misrepresenting information to secure a loan that you wouldn't qualify for under normal circumstances.
So someone might inflate their income or assets on a loan application
Exactly.
to get a bigger mortgage than they can actually afford.
Right. They might even submit fabricated documents to support their false claims.
Wow.
And while it might seem like a victimless crime,
Right.
the consequences of loan fraud can be severe.
Like what kind of consequences are we talking about?
Well, it can lead to financial instability for both the borrower,
Right.
who might end up with a loan they can't repay, and the lender, who loses money when loans go into default.
Okay.
Plus, widespread loan fraud contributes to a tighter lending market for everyone,
Right.
making it harder for legitimate borrowers to access credit.
It's a lose-lose situation all around.
Yeah.
And speaking of taking advantage of people in vulnerable situations,
Right?
those debt relief scams are especially disheartening.
They are. These scams prey on individuals struggling with debt,
Yeah.
offering false promises of relief.
Right.
They exploit people's anxieties about debt promising to negotiate with creditors on their behalf and reduce their overall debt burden for a fee.
So they make it sound like a quick and easy fix.
Right.
But it's just another way to take advantage of people who are already struggling.
Instead of providing real help, they often disappear with the victim's money.
Wow.
Without making any meaningful effort to resolve the debt.
Yeah.
In some cases, they might even encourage victims to stop making payments to their creditors.
Right.
Which can further damage their credit score and worsen their financial situation.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
So if you are overwhelmed with debt and looking for help, what should you do?
Seek out reputable credit counseling agencies or financial advisors who can provide guidance and support without resorting to deceptive tactics.
Right.
Remember, there are legitimate ways to manage and reduce debt.
That's reassuring to know.
Yeah.
So it's really all about finding trustworthy resources and being wary of anyone who promises a quick and easy solution.
Exactly.
That seems to be a recurring theme here.
It's a crucial takeaway from our exploration of fraudulent schemes.
Right.
And speaking of scams that prey on vulnerability, those online dating and romance scams are becoming more common, especially with so many people meeting online.
Oh, I've heard so many stories about people who have been emotionally and financially devastated by these scams.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine how someone could be so heartless.
Well, these scammers are masters of deception.
Right.
Targeting individuals seeking romantic connections.
Okay.
They create elaborate fake profiles and captivating stories to build trust.
Yeah.
And lure their victims into a fabricated online romance.
So they're essentially playing on people's loneliness and desire for love.
Exactly.
Making them more susceptible to manipulation.
Once they've gained the victim's trust and established an emotional connection, they'll fabricate a financial emergency.
Right.
They might claim to need money for a medical crisis, family tragedy, or even to help them travel to meet the victim in person.
It's heartbreaking how they exploit people's emotions for their own financial gain.
Sadly, these scams can be incredibly convincing.
Right.
And victims often end up sending thousands of dollars.
Wow.
Sometimes even draining their life savings.
That's awful.
To someone they've never even met in person.
What are some red flags people should watch out for to avoid falling victim to these romance scams?
Be wary of individuals who profess love very quickly or refuse to video chat or meet in person.
Right.
Also pay attention to inconsistent details in their stories or any requests for money, especially if they involve wire transfers or gift cards, which are difficult to trace.
So if someone you've met online starts asking for money,
right,
especially under suspicious circumstances, that's a huge red flag.
Absolutely. It's always best to err on the side of caution when it comes to online relationships.
Shifting gears a bit.
Yeah.
What about mortgage fraud?
Okay, mortgage fraud.
I know this is a big issue with serious consequences.
It's a complex issue that involves deliberate misrepresentation or omission of crucial facts during the mortgage process.
Right.
It can be perpetrated by borrowers, lenders, or other parties involved in the transaction.
So there are multiple ways this can play out.
Yes.
Okay.
A borrower might falsify their income documents to qualify for a larger loan than they can actually afford, or they might inflate property values, hide debts, or use straw buyers, individuals who pose as the borrower to secure the loan on behalf of someone else who wouldn't qualify.
It sounds like a tangled web of deception.
Yeah.
What kind of impact does this have?
Well, mortgage fraud not only harms lenders who issue loans based on false information, but it also destabilizes the housing market, driving up prices and making it more difficult for legitimate buyers to enter the market.
Wow. So the consequences are far-reaching.
Right.
It's a reminder that these scams have implications that go beyond just the immediate victims.
Precisely. And speaking of scams with broad implications, let's delve into the world of job and employment scams.
Okay, job and employment scams.
Yeah, these target individuals seeking employment, often preying on their vulnerability and desperation.
Job searching is stressful enough without having to worry about scams.
Right.
What do these scams look like?
These scams often involve enticing job offers that promise high salaries, excellent benefits, and sometimes even the ability to work from home.
Right.
However, the catch is that the scammer might ask for upfront payments for things like training materials, background checks, or even visa processing fees.
So they dangle this appealing opportunity in front of you,
Yeah.
and then they hit you with hidden costs.
Exactly. In other cases, they might gather sensitive personal information from applicants
Okay.
under the guise of conducting background checks,
Right.
only to use that data for identity theft.
That's a nightmare scenario for anyone who's just trying to find a job.
Yeah.
How can people protect themselves from falling victim to these scams?
Well, thorough research is crucial. Always verify the legitimacy of the company and the job offer
Okay.
before providing any personal information or making any payments.
Right.
Look for red flags like unrealistic promises,
Okay.
grammatical errors in emails or job postings, and requests for upfront fees.
It's like that old saying, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Exactly.
These scammers often rely on our hopes and dreams to blind us to these obvious warning signs.
That's why it's so important to stay informed and aware of the tactics they use.
Right.
Knowledge is power, and by understanding the mechanics of these scams,
Yeah.
we can empower ourselves to make informed decisions and protect ourselves from becoming victims.
It feels like we've uncovered a whole underground world of deception.
It is a lot, isn't it?
Who knew there were so many ways people try to take advantage of others?
Yeah, well, it's
Right.
important to be aware of the risks, but also to remember that we have the power to protect ourselves.
You're right. So let's shift gears and talk about what we can do about it. And this guide we've been discussing has a whole section on how to avoid falling for these schemes.
Right.
Where do we even begin?
Well, I think it boils down to a few key principles.
Okay.
Being informed, being cautious, and being proactive.
Okay. That seems manageable. What's the first step?
Well, the guide emphasizes the importance of being skeptical,
Oh,
especially of offers that seem too good to be true.
right.
Scammers often dangle incredibly tempting deals with promises of unrealistic returns and minimal risk.
So if something sounds too easy, there's probably a catch.
Exactly.
I guess that's good advice for life in general, not just for
Yeah.
avoiding scams.
I think so.
The guide also stresses the importance of doing your research.
Yes.
That seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah,
But I imagine it's easy to skip that step when you're excited about an opportunity.
it is. It's crucial to take the time to thoroughly research any company, investment opportunity, or individual before making any commitments or parting with your money.
Right.
The internet is a powerful tool for research.
So if someone is pitching you an investment, don't just take their word for it.
Exactly.
Look up the company, read reviews, and see if there are any red flags.
Look for independent reviews, verify credentials, and check for any negative reports or complaints.
Okay.
Don't just rely on the information they provide.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And this next tip seems especially important when dealing with charities or organizations.
Right.
Verify the legitimacy of the entity.
Absolutely. Don't just take their word for it.
Right, yeah.
Verify their legitimacy through independent sources.
So if you're considering donating to a charity, you can check their registration status, look them up on charity watchdog websites, and see how they spend their money.
Yes,
Transparency is key.
definitely.
Okay, this next tip feels like a no-brainer,
Yeah,
but it's probably worth repeating.
sure.
Never send money to someone you don't know.
That's a big one. It's essential to exercise extreme caution when it comes to sending money,
Right.
especially to someone you've never met in person or haven't thoroughly vetted. Think about those romance scams we discussed. The scammers often build trust and emotional connections before asking for money.
It's almost like they groom their victims, making them feel loved and understood before taking advantage of them.
Sadly, that's a very apt description. Never let your heart roll your head when it comes to financial decisions,
Okay.
especially when dealing with someone you've only met online.
The guide also talks about the importance of looking for red flags.
Yes.
We've touched on some of these throughout our deep dive, but it'll be helpful to recap.
Of course. Some common red flags include high-pressure sales tactics,
Okay.
promises of guaranteed returns with no risk requests for upfront fees,
Right.
vague or contradictory information, and insistence on secrecy or urgency.
So if someone is pressuring you to make a quick decision or trying to keep things hush-hush,
Exactly.
those are warning signs.
Trust your gut instincts. If something feels off or too good to be true, it probably is.
Right.
Don't be afraid to walk away from a deal or opportunity that seems suspicious.
It's better to miss out on a potential opportunity than to become a victim of a scam.
I agree. And if you're ever unsure about a financial decision or a legal matter,
Yeah.
the guide recommends consulting with professionals.
So if you're considering a major investment or dealing with a complex situation, talk to a financial advisor or a lawyer.
Exactly. They can provide objective advice, help you assess the risks and benefits, and ensure that you're making informed decisions.
It's like having an expert in your corner to help you navigate those tricky situations.
Exactly. And finally, the guide emphasizes the importance of reporting suspected fraud.
This is important not only for protecting yourself,
Right.
but also for potentially preventing others from becoming victims.
Reporting fraud helps law enforcement agencies track down scammers and shut down their operations.
So who should you report suspected fraud to?
Well, the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, is a good starting point for consumer fraud,
Okay.
while the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, handles investment scams. You can also report scams to the Better Business Bureau, BBB, and your state's Attorney General's office.
And if you've been targeted by an online scam, you can report it to the Internet Crime Complaint Center, IC3.
Exactly. Remember, reporting these schemes is not just about seeking justice for yourself.
Yeah,
It's about protecting others and making the internet a safer place for everyone.
it's a collective effort to fight back against scammers and hold them accountable.
I agree.
Well, this deep dive has been incredibly informative, albeit a little unsettling.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
It's important to be aware of the risks, but also to remember that we have the power to protect ourselves.
I agree with that.
Knowledge is power. By understanding how these schemes work and taking steps to protect ourselves, we can stay ahead of the scammers.
Exactly. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and stay safe.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of fraudulent schemes.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We hope you feel more informed and empowered. Until next time.